Don't share your database with other apps. A lot of CMSs have the capability to add table prefixes to your databases. This simply allows you to put multiple applications in a single database. So the reason you don't want your applications in the same database is, say you've got a shopping cart or a store that you've secured and you protected, and then you've got your blog that talks about your family or your kids or your dog or whatever on the same database. If someone were to get into your blog and hack your blog for some reason, now they have access to all this secure credit card information because you're sharing the database and you're sharing the logins. Even if you have different logins, same database, they're going to have access to the same information. So use different databases. Change your table prefixes. When I say table prefixes, I mean table names. Not every CMS or every platform allows you to do this, but this kind of speaks back to security by obscurity. If you can change anything from the default, don't use the default admin username, don't use the default password, don't use the default admin directory if you can help it. A lot of times, hackers or attackers will create scripts or automated attack programs that will literally scan thousands of IPs for certain WordPress plugins, WordPress vulnerabilities, open source vulnerabilities, whatever the case may be. But if your variables or your table names or your usernames or your admin directories don't match up with their script, then obviously it won't work on your site and they'll move on to an easier target. So security by obscurity generally is not a good thing by itself, but when used in conjunction with other things, it's definitely something that can give you a leg up security-wise. For your database, most of the times when you install a database, in some instances, it will listen on all interfaces. And what I mean by that is if you have 3 network interfaces on your computer, it's going to listen on all 3 interfaces plus localhost, your IPv6, the whole 9. So be cognizant of that and only have your database listen on whatever interface you need. Generally, if you have your database and your web application on the same server, your database only needs to listen on localhost. If it's on another server than your application server, listen on the interface you need to listen to, and use something like Windows Firewall or IP tables to limit access to that particular database if you don't have a hardware firewall. And then back up your site, back up your data. This is this is kind of a no-brainer as well, but if you get hacked, or even if your data gets corrupt for some reason, or you delete a file, you want to have a vetted backup and something you know you can revert to without much data loss. So in regards to your hosting environment, we've compiled a list of need-to-haves and nice-to-haves. Of course, we think everything's a need-to-have, but we understand there's constraints regarding budgets, technical knowledge gaps, things of that sort. So we think everybody needs to have a network firewall. Hardware is usually best. If you don't have the means for a hardware firewall, at least use something like UFW or IP tables or something similar, Windows Firewall. But we want to block access to things that don't need accessed, don't need to be accessed. Spoke to VPN access a little earlier. Even if your site's secure, even if you're 100% secure, you're still surfing Twitter, you're still surfing Facebook. You know, until recently they didn't have SSL support. But you may surf other sites that may not necessarily be encrypted, so you want to take security for yourself into your own hands. Encrypt your traffic, send that off to an offsite server, and protect yourself that way. Everybody knows antivirus is almost needed for Windows 100% of the time, but some people may not think it's needed for Linux. If you're connecting a Samba share to a Linux machine, there's a possibility you may transfer virus-infected files. But on the other hand, speaking to code injection and things, antivirus software will sometimes detect obfuscated code, obfuscated JavaScript, hacks, base64 encoded things. So antivirus isn't necessarily only for viruses. It's pretty common to have antivirus on Linux in our environments. SSL certificates, obviously you want to encrypt everything, put the envelope on your form contents. You can get an SSL certificate for free in some cases for 30 days from some sites, but an SSL certificate in general is usually pretty cheap for a year. You can get it for 20, 30 bucks. And isolate your environments. If you can, separate your web and your database. Just makes it harder for attackers to get places, but at all costs, separate your production and your dev environment. You don't want to expose yourself to any unnecessary risk. Nice to haves, web application firewalls. So we talk that regular network firewalls can't protect you against web application layer attacks. So SQL injections, cross-site scripting, things of that nature are basically traffic to a firewall. What a web application firewall is, for those that don't know, it sits in between the internet, the users on the internet, and your web server. So if I were to attack a site, or not me, but some bad person, were to attack a site that had a web application firewall, that person would send SQL injection, cross-site scripting, directory tampering, anything that matched a signature or some heuristic database in a web application firewall. That web application firewall will inspect the traffic, look at that request, and then block that request before it even hits the web server, should that meet one of the signatures. So that's a good layer of protection to have in front of your web server, in front of your awesome coding. One thing also is two-factor authentication, something you know and something you have. We use a cell phone service. So if someone were to get my password and someone were to get my cell phone, I'd have bigger problems than worrying about them getting into my account. Two-factor authentication is good. In fact, if y'all are familiar with the RSA ID type key fobs, Google just released an authenticator service that actually works the same way, but it's a smartphone app. You just enable Google Authenticator on your Google account, and then you can tie that into SSH. They have some other modules to tie that into, but generally speaking, it works for your Gmail at least. Vulnerability monitoring. So we need to be secure. We need to protect ourselves against vulnerabilities, but what do we protect? Vulnerability monitoring, there's software that will scan your servers. There's software that will scan your websites to let you know what vulnerabilities you have, to let you know what you need to fix, what you need to protect. A couple different software programs that I like to use is W3AF is a good open source web application scanner. Rapid7 has a product called Nexpose Community, which is a free software. It's not necessarily open source, but it's a free software that allows you to monitor vulnerabilities as it relates to your systems and not necessarily your applications. So those are two good programs. Intrusion detection. There's two different ways you can do this. You can go the full-blown snort or Saracata route that basically hook up an appliance to a span port on your network. It looks at all the traffic and alerts you to suspicious activity on your network. Maybe somebody in your network, you're not necessarily worried about someone outside, but someone in your network's trying to attack someone else on your network. Intrusion detection is good for that. Or you can use what's called a host intrusion detection system. Something like Trend Micro has OSSec, which is a free solution that sits on the server itself and manages only that server's traffic. Log management can be as simple as looking at logs daily or weekly or something to see if you can see anything suspicious. But there's also solutions out there that will correlate logs and events from different machines to alert you to any weird activity that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find just looking at a log. It correlates different events and alerts you that way. And then disk encryption. Disk encryption will encrypt your mobile laptops, and we use it a lot on our mobile computers simply to secure our laptops and our mobile hard drives in the case that it were to get lost and stolen. It looks like I actually ran over a little bit of time, and I'm done. I'll be walking around afterwards if any of you guys have any questions or want to talk shop. So, thanks.
Chris, you've actually got a minute. You got 3 minutes left here. So if you want to take a question from the audience, it didn't go red.
I thought you said it went red over. Okay,
it goes really red and another
right.
couple. But I'll
Does
give
anybody
you
have any
those
questions?
Three. Yep, down at third row here.
Yes, sir.